Sam, lovely to have you on the podcast. Warm welcome. I'm excited to be talking to you today because you're the founder of So Squared. And not only are you a very successful agency working with influencer marketing, working with social commerce, but also you actually launched a whole tech platform, a SaaS product to facilitate how you can work with influencers nowadays, how you can work with creators. So I'm excited to dive into all of these topics, but maybe let's get a little bit of background on you. What got you first interested in creator marketing, in affiliates, and the whole space? Because it seems like it's a little bit of a black box for a lot of people. You know that there are influencers. Obviously, everybody's on social media all the time, but it's not something where I would say that there's a very clear career path. So, what got you into it, and how did it evolve from
Yeah,
there?
great to be here. So I think from my perspective, it came from a bit of an obsession around consumer behavior and what influenced people to make purchasing decisions. I think what's really quite interesting around the creator economy is if we look at influencers in particular, like the term influencer is to, or the term influence is to influence somebody's purchasing decisions, decision making, etc. Like this is not a new phenomenon. Like we've had influencers for as long as the dawn of time, right? You know, prior to social media, it was celebrities, sports professionals. You know, in the UK, like we had like David and Victoria Beckham, like, you know, with this like huge like worldwide success that would influence everything. Like growing up as like a teenager, like my hairstyles resonated with whatever David Beckham had at the time. But you know, pre this, you had like political figures. You know, when you looked at like campaigns that are being run around like JFK and stuff like that, it's like how did he influence people? Like so, like influencer marketing isn't new. Like it's been around forever. It's just the way that we look at influencer marketing now is social media influencer marketing. You know, attention is now on our devices. Attention is now on social media, whether that's Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Snap, whatever that might be. It's the influencers are the people there who hold influence that are influencing our purchasing decisions. So I guess like that's kind of where it all really stemmed from, was the fact that everything that seems to be new in the advertising world just isn't actually new at all.
Right. And I mean, the big difference that I can see to the Victoria and David Beckhams from 20 years ago is that now it's a lot more democratized, right? Everybody can just turn on their phone, turn on their camera, and post something that potentially might go viral. Most likely not, but there's a chance. And you can actually approach that very strategically, which I'm sure we're gonna dive more into later. But you saw this possibility to enter this space. What then made you decide that, okay, this is actually where I would like to go professionally? And maybe also, were there any pain points that you already saw worth solving, or was it more that you were just drawn to that out of pure
For sure. And I
interest?
mean, like, just to kind of like double click on your like democratizing, you know, two of the
Sure.
largest creator economies in the world are Nigeria and Brazil, right? You know, literally the ability to like have a smartphone, create content, and to like grow a whole career out of that. So like it really has leveled the playing field in terms of access to one, like earning potential, and two, also like kind of your ability to bring in an audience. From my perspective, what kind of like really pushed me into this was as the way as consumers we choose to consume media in different ways, with that being mainly social media, with the rise of the social media influencer and the creator economy. I looked at the space and like kind of like with all, whilst influencer marketing isn't new, the creator economy was very infant, right? And naturally, with all infant industries, tends to come a lack of infrastructure. So I was looking at this space and I said, as more and more businesses on a professional level want to work with more creators, how are they going to enable those transactions, not just from like an actual monetary transaction perspective, but actually the execution of the campaign? So what is the most pragmatic way to execute campaigns at scale? And that was kind of where the original idea for So Squared came in. Now, So Squared has had like many evolutions over the last like 3.5 years. But for us, like the initial idea was, okay, more and more businesses want to transact in this space. We need to add that professional infrastructure layer to it. The way to do that would be through technology. Obviously, naturally, technology is build once, sell a billion times. That's kind of like the whole like kind of SaaS methodology. effectively scaling human capital became bloated, inefficient, etc. Which the irony of that is like we did pivot now to an agency. So the irony is we did actually pivot to the human capital side of things, which we can go into in a bit later. But ultimately, we needed to provide the infrastructure that would allow businesses to scale influencer creator campaigns. So how do we do that? We look at other labor force marketplaces. You look at things like whether it's like Fiverr, Upwork, these kind of businesses where you have the ability to hire talent on one side and execute campaigns throughout. So that was kind of like the big push for us, recognizing that, things like terms of businesses, marketing, general just like kind of procurement and project management, like things that are so standard in like every other form of business, just didn't exist within the influencer and creator economy. So that's kind of like, that was a big push into doing it. And that's kind of how version 1.0 of So Squared started, which was like you said, the SaaS tool, which was the creator marketplace. So connecting brands with creators.
Right. Yeah, it was kind of weird actually to see how much of a Wild West influencer marketing was in its early days, because as you said, there are so many other examples of infrastructure or marketplaces in other industries that were already well established, and anyone could look at that and see that that would make sense for influencers as well. And yet it took surprisingly long, in my opinion, for this second wave of influence and creator marketing to really
Yeah, I
be
mean, still
launched.
say it is the Wild West. Like it still completely is. Like we're currently expanding into the GCC region right now, and like it still is the Wild West. I mean, look, it's still the Wild West in the UK,
What is GCC?
into the
Sorry.
UAE, Saudi, those kind of regions. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, also depending on which geographic location you look at, right? There are more advanced and certainly way less advanced areas. And I think you kind of got lucky to happen to live in the UK, which was very early to launch TikTok Shop, was the first market for TikTok Shop in the West, and then certainly is a very well established market as well, also English speaking for influencers. So I'm sure that helped you get So Squared off the ground,
Sure.
right?
I mean, we never intend like, so social commerce was something that wasn't even on my radar, right? We were looking at kind of like straight like influencer marketing was the original goal, right? At the time of bringing first product to market, so still the creator marketplace, we had the privilege of working really closely with TikTok. Like they just launched TikTok Shop in the UK. We were like kind of like within the first cohort of partners, like the first 5 like partners to kind of come in and really reshape like what is affiliate marketing, but also that kind of social commerce. So like prior to TikTok Shop, we'd had like Instagram Shop tried to launch, didn't really work. Facebook has its marketplace and all that kind of stuff. There has always been like shopping throughout social media, but it was really kind of closing the loop on the user experience for the end buyer. So focusing on the end buyer, like how can we allow this person to make a purchase in app in the most seamless way possible? Like Uber's whole like kind of strap line was like, you can order a car and it'll be with you in 3 clicks. So like tap, 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 and it's on its way, right? TikTok is kind of a very similar thing where it's like I can see a product, tap, 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 and it's on its way to me. The the best thing that obviously TikTok has got all these years of like understanding, from Douyin in China, like understanding like consumer behavior. Like obviously in Douyin, like live shopping is enormous, like live social commerce space across like sort of China and also like Malaysia, Indonesia, and countries like that. But they had that kind of like they had the execution muscle, and they also had like the data to support that. Like, look, this is next gen customer, and we say social commerce equals next gen customer. It's the next generation of buyers who have spent their time growing up on social media. So that's how they're being influenced to make purchasing decisions. Now, I don't want to type in a code SAM10 a discount to get my little discount and track influence marketing that way. I don't want to click on an
Right.
affiliate link like now and then be redirected to a third-party website where the UI UX is terrible, the checkout experience is crap. Like, there's not even Apple Pay on there, so like, I churn straight away because I can't find my wallet, right? TikTok just knew this, and when they launched TikTok Shop, it was like, okay, we're going to allow this seamless shopping experience where the customer, me and you, can view content, can engage with content, and then can actually make that purchase straight away. The way that I kind of look at the whole evolution of like commerce is traditional bricks and mortar, experiential shopping, you'd go out, enjoy yourself, stuff like that. that was replaced with e-commerce. E-commerce, we kind of replaced experiential with convenience, like the convenience of being able to shop on our devices instantly, etc. Social commerce is like a hybrid between experiential and convenience. You have the experience of whether it's live shopping, whether it's affiliate videos, etc. Like that experiential side of things, but you also have the convenience of e-commerce. And I think being involved with TikTok from such an early stage in the Western world has literally given us like a passenger side ride to like how this is all exploding right now.
And were you familiar with social commerce before TikTok approached you, or was that something that you had to then go and read up on, do some discovery work on what was actually happening in China? Was that on your radar before you heard that they plan to launch in the
Not really,
UK?
no. I think like it's always kind of been on a lot of people's radar. Like I'm 32 years old, right? So I grew up in the era of like once TV programs had finished running, we had QVC, right? And people were selling things through TV. Like realistically, like that was like very, very early stage, like social commerce. Like okay, technically it wasn't social commerce because it was through TV, but like that whole idea of selling through affiliate models, through like creators, through lives or whatever that might have been, has always kind of been like in the back of my mind. But it wasn't until the penny drop moment was the moment that we sat with TikTok, we understood like, right, this is a really big market. And then when you go away and you look at like China, Malaysia, Indonesia, and you go, oh, this is a really big market. I mean, the global social commerce industry is like currently valued at something like 1.6 trillion or something crazy like that, right? And that's only going one way, because if we look at the Western world, TikTok as a platform are the only real platform that have mastered the whole experience, right? That closed loop experience from affiliate or from live stream to making the purchasing transaction, right? YouTube are testing in India, Meta are testing in a few states in America, Snap will probably introduce it at some point. Pinterest is going to be, I think it's called Pinterest Lens or something like that, right? We don't really do much work on Pinterest, but like, Pinterest is testing it. You've then got things like CTV, right? You've got like Disney Plus, Hulu, Discovery, Peacock, like all testing like in-app streaming shopping. Like this is the future of how we choose to shop. And that 1.6 trillion is going to be a tiny figure in the next, it's going to be tiny compared to the end figure in the next sort of 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, it's also interesting that TikTok kind of carved out that niche of discovery commerce for themselves, right? Where you, as a consumer, get product recommendations or got introduced to new products and new brands through your feed, and you're actually able to then use the app to not only discover products there, but then also shop it. Obviously, there's a halo effect around the TikTok shop experience where still a lot of people are somewhat hesitant to then buy within TikTok itself and instead go to Amazon or go to the brand's website itself. But I think as TikTok becomes more established as a shopping destination, it's also gonna somewhat eliminate that halo effect, right? Where you're more and more inclined to then buy directly through the app just because of the convenience.
That's like, look, the gap between advertising and commerce is pretty much non-existent. And like you just said, like discovery commerce, like we say, like the point of discovery is now the point of sale. Like meeting your customer where they're at has never been more important. But then when you look at kind of like consumer sentiment, like people will feel more confident shopping through Amazon. They will feel more confident shopping through other platforms, right? But that's why, like, when we look at now how Zozo has evolved, so like talking about kind of how we've kind of moved and kind of pivoted, like we were this creator marketplace, and we can go back and discuss why that didn't work. But where we are now is this kind of all-encompassing like data analytics platform, so specifically for social commerce. So really helping marketing teams and commercial teams like bridge that gap, speak the same language by using data to inform commercial decisions within the business, commercial and marketing decisions, right? And it's that halo effect that you talk about. Like, for example, when you look at MMM models, like how is TikTok Shop, when you look at econometrics, like how is TikTok Shop really driving purchases elsewhere? You see it like, you go into like a super drug, or you go into a Boots in the UK, and you see point of sale with certain like kind of cosmetic products, which says TikTok Shop viral product. It's at the point of sale in retail because people are leveraging that awareness through TikTok Shop to drive other channels. Because ultimately, if you're a commerce business, right, you don't, unless you're unless it's through your own website and you own all the customer, you don't want to be too reliant on Amazon. You don't want to be too reliant on TikTok Shop. You don't want to be too reliant on eBay, right? Because all of a sudden, like, then your entire revenue stream is coming through one source that you do not own. That's a scary place to be, as you know, as a D2C brand.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. When we go back a little bit to the tech platform that you built out for So Squared, can you walk us a little bit through the functionalities that you have built into it, the problems that you see it solve already with your customers, and then maybe also the different types of customers that you have? Because I know you have agencies work with it, but then also have the influencer and the creator part work with it on the other end. So sort of a two-sided marketplace. Can you walk me through how that is actually
Yeah. So
used?
when we first launched So Squared, it was a pure play, two-sided marketplace, brands on one side, creators on the other. We raised some capital like early stages, and we really kind of pushed forward with wanting to grow a marketplace. Now, when I look back on this experience, like we didn't raise enough capital. Like marketplaces generally need like a lot of cash to grow. Like building that network effect until you hit escape velocity is like a really challenging thing to do. What that meant though, with limited resources, is that it meant we had to really roll our sleeves up and really get into the nitty gritty of the users on the platform, both creator side and brand side. There's a few things that we noticed which like really influenced the pivot. And if you look at kind of the actual creator economy, a lot of creator marketplaces have made a very similar or adjacent pivot, because pure play creator marketplaces just haven't seemed to really take off in the way that you think they would. So there's a couple of reasons for that, and this is what we kind of like look back on, like when we do an autopsy of our business in its first couple of years. Is one, the creator economy it's an infant industry, as we said, which generally means, like, you know, in some instances it's not as sophisticated as other marketplaces, right? So what you end up having is the labor force on one side, which traditionally on other labor force marketplaces might have been like developers, graphic designers, that kind of stuff, a relatively less sophisticated labor force. And then on the other side, you've got basically marketeers that are entering this whole new world of marketing that they've not traditionally transacted in. And often a lot of campaign specification and briefs were effectively being copied from other people, right? So you effectively got lack of strategy on one side, less than normal sophistication on the other side from a labor force perspective, which ultimately led to, you know, basically campaigns not being completed in the way in which the brand wanted, the creators getting frustrated because the brand doesn't know what they want, and it's this spiraling circle basically, where effectively like it's not really happening. And then on the other side, what we also noticed was that most B2B marketplaces are used by SMEs. Now that's fine.
Mm,
We didn't want to sell into SMEs, right? My background is like working with larger enterprises, etc. Like we wanted to sell into big businesses. And the problem with selling into big businesses is they don't want another piece of software that sits in their tech stack that they're not going to use. That's
yeah.
why they have agencies who help them come up with strategy, help them spend that money, help them drive results for the business. Whereas SMEs are a lot more budget conscious. The founder, director, owner is often very close to the decision making on all activities early stage. So they're going to look for a solution like a marketplace. So to make a large B2B marketplace with SMEs, you need a lot of customers. So going back to the funding
Mm,
situation, is that you need to be able to really throw fuel on the fire to really try and get that kind of network effect. So ultimately, what ended up happening was we built a traditional marketplace. So discovery identification tools, campaign creation setup, messaging, campaign management. We even built payment rails into it, right? And what we decided was actually that through TikTok Shop, we were starting to get a reputation of like being able to work with larger enterprise businesses. So understanding things like stakeholder management, business plan proposals, procurement processes, like understanding like what these overarching KPIs for these larger businesses would be. And ultimately, they wanted us to do the doing for them, right? So we started to build an internal agency team that sat alongside our product. And eventually we just made the decision. We said, like, look, we're basically doing 50% this and 50% this. Like it's really convoluted. Like The platform is trying to sell a SaaS license to an SME, yet we're trying to charge enterprise pricing to these large businesses. Like the message just doesn't make any sense, right? We need to pick one direction, and we picked the enterprise route direction. So we did a full pivot. We decided to kind of start to build out our internal agency team. But what we did with the software was we brought our software internally and became a tech first agency. So what we said was like all this hard work that we've done, of capital we've invested into building the product, actually, this is our USP. This is what gives us our advantage, our speed to market, our ability to identify talent that, no one else is looking at. And then ultimately we said, you know what? The one thing that enterprise businesses really care about is data. They really care about that data side of piece that's going to help them inform strategies. When you're spending millions of pounds a year, right? You're not just doing that off the back of a napkin, right? You need like hard cold facts that are going to tell you why to do that. So we started to build out a lot of like kind of cutting edge data analytics tools, taking data from platforms, put it into our own machine learning models, make that proprietary data, started looking at computer visual analytics as to what's driving outcomes for results. And kind of that's where we are now. So that's kind of the evolution of we started with one product, we listened to customers, we looked at the product, we really, really got into the weeds of how people were using the product. And now this is where we've ended up.
Yeah, I can totally see how that is a USP. I've been talking to quite a few agency owners and CEOs, people who have been working predominantly with TikTok Shop in the last 3 years or so. But none of them have any other part of the business than just the agency part, right? So for you to be able to actually utilize all the data, get all that insights, and then put that back into the software part of your business, and vice versa, put all the information that you gather through your platform into your agency work. I mean, that must be an incredible flywheel that you then get to utilize.
For sure, yeah. I think like it from a reporting perspective, like I honestly I challenge anybody to do the level of reporting that we do across TikTok Shop. Sometimes you could say it's overkill, right? But like all these like data points help us feed the models, help us feed insightful decisions for our clients so that they are making decisions that are going to achieve certain business outcomes. Now, that might not necessarily always be GMV. We have certain clients who will sell billions of dollars of product through other channels every year. So TikTok Shop is a very small channel for them, right? However, going back to what I said about TikTok closing that loop, right? In terms of how effective your marketing is, there is no better way of understanding how effective your marketing is than somebody actually buying the product, right? So when we really look at it on a granular level, we can see like what types of creative personas, what type of content types, what format of content, what types of hooks, pattern recognition and transcripts, like all these granular bits of detail that ultimately show us like what is leading to somebody actually purchasing a product. That data, we can then blow that up and allow that to be used across the entire marketing plan for the next year, right? So it's giving us insight into how we can develop our marketing plans for future years.
I think,
No,
yeah,
that was
go
it.
ahead. I think social commerce and maybe affiliate marketing even more so is also chronic at just not being able to provide a lot of hard data. I know at least in the past with influencers, you would kind of reach out to them as a brand and be like, hey, we give you $1,000 or 10,000 and can you post about us? And then you maybe get like the impressions on that post, and then you kind of had to calculate back from that how much you possibly maybe have sold through that, or how much of it was just brand exposure. Like it's so vague, right? And to be able to through your platform be able to collect a lot more data, a lot more insights, and then feed that back into the grander scheme of things for those very large enterprise brands, I can totally see how that has enormous value for them. And as you said, I think we're just at the very early stages of what is possible through the creator economy and through social commerce. So if your platform is able to grow together with social commerce, I think that would be an incredible win. Do you try to tailor the platform more and more towards social commerce as a whole, or maybe even specifically TikTok Shop? Because I see a lot of pain points still out there ready to be addressed. For example, how a lot of TikTok Shop agencies work with their affiliates. often in the thousands, right? And they might just have Discord groups and Facebook groups and maybe a WhatsApp chat where everybody is in. Like, it's so messy. So it would be fantastic to have a platform that is actually able to address these kind
Yeah,
of
and I think
problems.
like ultimately as well, like that's so right now as a business, like and we've learned this over the past 3.5 years, like you can't do everything at once, but it's better to do one thing 10 out of 10 than do 10 things 2 out of 10, right? So as a business now for us, like we are super focused on this like post-campaign analytics data reporting, like where we can basically, even if they're not a client of ours, somebody, another TikTok shop agency can come to me and say, hey, Sam, we just ran this Black Friday campaign. We work with 1,000 affiliates. Like, we'd love for you to like sort of run some data on all the reporting. Yeah, sure, no problem, right? That might be another product service line that we offer, the ability for people to basically pay per report sort of basis, but that's still in the pipeline. Um, so I think like we need to be hyper focused on building what we set out to build, which is like, the most comprehensive data analytics tool for the TikTok shop ecosystem. I think what then probably happens from there is we recognize that like if we look at social commerce, like for me personally, TikTok shop is the wedge, right? It's the wedge in social commerce right now, and that is going to get bigger. So I think whilst TikTok shop is still the wedge, we don't need to focus on the broader social commerce space. So, like for example, I said like the Instagram shopping, the YouTube shopping, like even the CTV shopping and all that kind of stuff, right? It will spread ourselves way too thin. So I think the next stage for us then is to really focus on that campaign management perspective, right? Is to how to basically streamline the campaign management as much as possible, right? But I think if I look at where we're heading as a business, this is campaign management that works for us as an agency. I think ultimately, like, we want to grow this business so that we then become attractive to whether it's the holdcos or someone like that who says, like, look, we need to activate TikTok Shop for our clients or social commerce for our clients. We need an agency that has a unique, proprietary bit of technology that will really give us that USP. I think we need to build campaign management that makes sense for us and not traditionally like in a SaaS perspective that will make sense for loads of people, because there are a lot of really good products out there, that are building campaign management tools, mass affiliate outreach for TikTok shop and stuff like that. But they're all very, very generic, right? Which is fine. But it goes back to that kind of same reason why we didn't go down the path of the creator marketplaces. When you build generic, you typically tend to build for the SME market, right? We're not building for the SME market. We need to build so that we can adapt and on the fly for these huge conglomerate businesses. I mean, like if we look at like the AI space right now, what's the most hyped company at the moment is Palantir, right? And ultimately Palantir does enterprise AI. They're not building for the masses, they're building for the Pentagon and a few other people, right?
Right.
Because they're building really solid, almost custom solutions for these enormous businesses. And it's the same, obviously, not quite at Palantir level, but we're going down the same sort of route in terms of the fact that like our USP will be our ability to service these enormous businesses where the typical cookie cutter pay per month license software will not be able to service them.
Yeah, I think you're playing it very smartly there. I'm sure you have to be a little bit more patient because with something as new as social commerce, it typically takes a little bit longer until the very large enterprises jump on the train, right? They let the SME businesses make the early mistakes, and then as the whole industry matures to a certain extent, then they jump on that. But I do think we're reaching that point. I recently talked to a live presenter for L'Oreal in London, and she said they're going live every single week, several times, and oftentimes for like 12 hours straight. I talked to somebody else in Southeast Asia who said they have like 30 studios built out. Like, I think it was L'Oreal actually. So they're really taking advantage of this at a very early stage, and I'm sure they're just one of the early ones, and there's going to be a lot more following suit.
There,
So by that time, I think it's going to be a very good place that you have carved out for yourself with your platform, that you're going enterprise, and you're going to be able to serve them really
there are
well then.
some really big, you mentioned L'Oreal there, there are other really big businesses that have really taken TikTok Shop by the scruff of the neck and said, look, we're going to champion this. And I think, like with all enterprise business, like it's like moving oil tankers. You know, take for example, like, we have a client that we're currently waiting for sort of final sign off and approval on the moment now. We've been working with them on a business case proposal since April last year. That's enterprise sales for you. I got into the nitty gritty of their P&Ls, like, and really understanding like what's going to drive commerce outcomes for you as a business. And that's not just in TikTok Shop. Like they're also looking to activate on Amazon and Ocado, right? So it's like, how does TikTok Shop feed those? And I think like this is where we're like uniquely positioned in the sense that like we are patient, like we are a patient business. We're not looking to work with the SMEs per se. Like for us, it's not about onboarding a new brand every single week, right? That's not what we do, right? We build long-term alignment, multiple stakeholder management, multiple stakeholder buy-in, so that we can look at long-term strategic thinking. Where when we sign a client, that client's going to be with us for 3, 4, 5 years because they see this as a long-term play. They don't see this as oh, we need to turn a profit in 3 months on this, otherwise the business is gone. But
Right. I mean, that makes total sense. And it's good that you have your second pillar of agency work, so you're able to play the long game, right? You don't rely on onboarding a new merchant or a new brand every single week on your platform. So it's good to have that foundation already in place and then be able to target those really big whales. A lot of people, now that social commerce is up and coming, talk about how it's so much easier to actually attribute the value created to the creators out there. You can pay them a commission on sales and don't just have to pay them upfront without knowing what they will generate for you and how actually beneficial it will be for your brand. Do you think that eventually social commerce will eradicate influencer marketing as we know it, or do you think they can exist alongside each other?
absolutely not. Like I think ultimately as well, and this is just such a common misconception with TikTok Shop and social commerce, is that you can just go work with a creator and pay them a commission only. Like that's not how this works, right? This might work if you're a small business or if you're a business that's willing to work with everybody and anybody, and that's fine. Like, look, people buy from people, and people resonate with other people, whereas what resonates with me doesn't necessarily resonate with you, right? But ultimately, like for these much larger businesses, there is brand safety, there is tone of voice, there's brand messaging, etc. That all comes through content creators, people that create content for a living, influencers who have built audience over time. Like ultimately, like when you go and work with a content creator, it's an opportunity cost, right? So rather than going to a production studio for somebody to create an advert for you or to create a piece of content that sits organically on your social media, you're paying a content creator to produce that piece of content, right? So the opportunity cost there is you're not paying for content from the production studio, you're paying for content from the creator. So there's a cost there. There always will be. If you want good quality content, you'll have to pay for it. No ifs, no buts. You then got distribution channel, right? So traditionally, you would pay for an influencer's distribution channel, the ability to distribute to their audience, right? Influencers and creators will still always have that as part of their thing. They'll want a flat fee, but you'll be able to negotiate reduced flat fees, so reduce that risk as a business, and then have the potential upside of commission. That works the other way as well. As a creator, instead of just charging, say, $10,000 for a post, you could charge $5,000 for a post, but get 10% of all sales. Okay, amazing. You go and do 150, 200 grand's worth of sales off, a couple of pieces of content, 20 grand extra. Like that's amazing. Like the upside is incredible. So I think what it really does is it helps businesses mitigate downside risk, so you can reduce flat fees of working with influencers, but at the same time it enables creators to continuously earning for like kind of how good their piece of content is. So it's almost like a performance-based metric, right? Well, it is a performance-based metric, and I think that trade-off is what will work really well. I think currently where we are right now in the industry is that creators don't appreciate the potential upside. There has been a status quo, and it's just the incumbent way of creators being paid is on a flat fee. It's like flat fee, do my piece of content, that's it, I'm done. I think that narrative needs to change, and people need to understand that, yes, we appreciate the work that you do. Yes, we appreciate the audience you built. So here is a small flat fee, but we want to reward you for when the business wins, you also win. And I think when that narrative changes, that will really open up the creator economy.
And I see that already happening. I see a lot of people talk about how much money they make being a TikTok Shop affiliate. You always have to take it with a grain of salt. Obviously, it's what people post online, and it might not be 100% what is true, or it might be true for 1 month and then not for the other 11 of the year. But I do think that that will push the narrative into a direction where there's a much higher upside if you actually work mostly commission based and you're just very good at what you do, right? Obviously, the ones that are not very good at what they do and that don't drive conversion and they're not able to actually get people hooked and then also go and buy and not just watch, those will fall short. But they probably already know that deep down. And I think the other ones that know that what they produce in terms of content is really driving enormous value for the brands, they're going to be happy to take affiliate commission because it's having infinite upside potential and they're going to
But
capitalize on that.
so this is the problem, right? Let's take TikTok Shop like out of the equation. Before TikTok Shop was here, an influencer was only as good as their audience, right? That if an influencer promoted every product under the sun, their audience hated them, right? Their engagement dropped off a cliff. Nobody wanted to support them. Being a good influencer means being authentic, right? It means being true to yourself. And it means promoting products and services that you actually align to what you are about, right? The same principle applies for TikTok Shop, right? There are, I can pull out a million stories of people like, I made 100 grand a month off TikTok Shop. You won't be doing in a year's time though, because because every day you're posting 10 videos, 10 different products. You're just trying to sell people 24/7. Generally people don't like being sold to, right? So you might be hot for this month and you might even be hot for next month. And people are obviously, the algorithm's pushing everyone to your platform, to your videos, and everyone's purchasing. But that's going to drop off a cliff, right? And ultimately, like, this is kind of like the reality TV star bug of the influencer world, right? It's when people go on reality TV, they come out with 500,000 followers, they go and work with every brand under the sun for 6 months, and then nobody knows who they are a year later, and they're back to working a normal job. Same thing's going to happen with TikTok Shop. You've got all these people that are like, look, we see in the UK, people are quitting their jobs because they're like, I'm making £20,000 a month on TikTok Shop, right? But people are quitting their jobs to
Right.
do it for 6 months, and now they're struggling to make £500 a month on TikTok Shop because they're promoting every product. They're doing 10, 12 videos, 15 videos a day. They're not authentically promoting products that they stand by. And that's why we really see the intersection between the affiliate creator and the influencer. So the influencer will ultimately, build trust, build relationships with the end creator, with the end user, right? But you're giving them the ability to monetize in other monetization streams as opposed to just a flat fee. From a brand's perspective, though, brands will always win, right? Because brands don't care if the creator
Mm.
drops off a cliff in 2 months because they just get a new one. So for a brand, like a brand can just consistently keep working with everybody and anybody, and they don't care about, whether the creator drops off a cliff or not. And I think that's where like the creator economy needs to be smarter, because otherwise you'll just be at the disposal of brands, and brands will just keep using creators in this way.
As an affiliate creator, then, besides being more selective about which brands and companies you end up working for, are there other suggestions that you would have from your background and your insights into the industry, how they can actually maintain making a good living off of TikTok Shop and affiliate setup? Or is it just part of the game that eventually everybody's going to drop off a clip just because there's so much new content coming out all the
You need
time
to
as well?
find your niche, right? You need to find your niche and stay true to it. So for example, like, you could be a beauty TikTok Shop creator that reviews beauty products, right? And that is all you do. You look at like the viral products on TikTok, you give them honest reviews, you can even like say, look, this isn't that great, this isn't good. Makeup tutorials, create content that aligns with what you're selling, right? Or say I'm really interested in electronics, right? I could start a channel that does like gadget reviews. That I get a new delivery, I unbox it. This is the new drone that's being sold on TikTok Shop. I test it out, I tell you the features, and I create content around that. That's a really good TikTok Shop seller because I'm creating content that's actually valuable to people. If I'm going to create content where one video is a beauty product, one video is a weight loss gummy, one video is a some random fidget gadget sort of thing, whatever it is. And they're all just random videos. And all I'm basically saying is, you need to buy now. This is on discount. Make sure you get it now. Make sure you get it now. Like, you're going to last 2 months. And it's not going to work.
I think it's also important that you build that trust of your community, right? Like if you have your niche, if you're actually willing to say that certain products are not good, or you compare them and you say this one is better than the other, and for this and this and this reason, I think that builds a huge amount of trust, because nobody out there, right, or other people are doing it, but a lot of people are just promoting and trying to sell products that they might or might not believe in, and they might or might not hold back on information that would actually be relevant for the audience, but they also know that would hurt sales. So to be able to say, okay, this is actually not as great as I thought it would be, might in the long run really benefit you. And I see that, for example, with the largest live streamers in China, right? They're obviously very far ahead in that industry compared to the West. And people like Austin Lee, who talk to millions and millions of people every single night, he's willing to burn the bridges on some of those brands, right? And say, this is really not great. You should not buy this. And then others he chose very carefully, and his audience knows that and therefore
And
trusts
this is
him.
the thing, right? So like you have to be able to build trust. And that's not what's happening in the world right now. The reason why so many of these affiliates are doing well ultimately is because the brands are putting paid media behind them. You're effectively just an outlet and distribution channel for paid media, right? And that's what's pumping it. Yeah. Or you get a viral video because there's some sort of like, you've been very clever in the hook that you've used, or like, you might have used like a load of stuff around, like kind of like, so like when Shilajit gummies were like flying, like people like had like loads of like alpha male clips at the start saying like, you need to increase your testosterone, you've got low sex drive, all this kind of stuff. Like, and it was really kind of getting people in. The interesting thing about like kind of the way that a lot of TikTok affiliates are selling, and like you say, like not disclosing information, selling things that are misleading. There was a huge issue within TikTok Shop in the summer of 2024, where loads of apple cider vinegar gummies went viral because people were saying like they make you skinny, right? Well, apple cider vinegar doesn't make you skinny, right? But because the creators were saying that, the brands were jumping off the back of the fact that a creator was saying that. So we'll just put a load of paid media behind it. Whereas traditionally, if they ran that as a TV ad or a social media ad, that would never pass advertising standards. Like it would basically get flagged straight away for misinformation. So that's again like a good case study of how like the creators that were selling apple cider vinegar gummies in 2024, where are they now?
Yeah, I think it's a new industry with a lot of learnings to constantly take from it. And I think a lot of people that got burned on the early stages of TikTok Shop will probably also regret some of their decisions. But I hope that there's people out there like yourself who actually promote that message of building trust, building community, because it's, let's be honest, not as sexy of a message as saying I made 200K last month and this is how you can as well. So it seems like the ones that promote very fast success might overpower voices like yours. And I hope that that changes over time, because there's just a learning
Yeah,
curve,
but at
right?
the end of the day, like look at my client base. Like they're all like large, multi-billion-dollar enterprise businesses.
Yeah.
They'll listen to me. They're not going to listen to the guy he's basically screaming online about making 200 grand a year for the first 2 months, and he's now selling courses because he's not making 200 grand anymore. He's done 2 months of selling 200 grand. Like, here's my blueprint. You subscribe to my Substack or whatever it is, and I'll teach you how to make 200 grand a year. So the reason that you're selling courses is because you're not making 200 grand a year anymore.
Yep. As a side note, I always wonder about these course sellers. If you made as much money as you claim you are, you probably would just keep doing that and not branch out doing some other random side
Sure.
businesses, right? So should always be careful with the course sellers out there. But I think also tools like yours with So Squared could be in the future really help brands communicate the guidelines that they want their affiliate group to adhere to, right? If you as a brand want to avoid that your affiliates are going out promoting God knows what, and then after a month the sales drop to the bottom, you as a brand, I think, also have to take a certain amount of responsibility communicating brand guidelines, communicating the vision that you have for your products, and then make sure that your affiliate group sticks to that. So it would be fantastic to have your tool be able to do some of that
Yeah, I
work.
mean, on the roadmap, we've got like a bit of brand safety stuff that we're working on at the moment, where we can start to. It's very, very early stages. I wouldn't even want to dare give you a date of when it'll be completed, but being able to, look at content before it goes live, so have creators upload content, have it run it through our computer visuals, and basically flag any signs of like what could be damaging for brands, like what could be misinterpreted, etc. Just to kind of flag that brand safety element of it.
What kind of other innovations are you looking forward to in the creator economy going forward? What kind of tech do you feel like is still missing, but you either build it yourself in the future or other people are working on it? What do you think is really lacking right now and will really take this industry to the next level?
So I think one of the things that we're working on, which I'm really excited about, is from a computer visual perspective, and just generally the way that like AI is written. So from my perspective, like one, I'm a strong believer that like AI content creation is not going to be a real thing. To be honest with you, like it will be in terms of producing like TV advertisements and actual branded content for sure. But for me personally, like within the creator economy, like as I said before, like creators build an audience. Doesn't matter if you can create, 20 pieces of content every hour, you still have to build an audience. People buy from people buy from people they trust, right? That the fundamental kind of psychology of making purchasing decisions. I don't think that AI generated content is going to bridge that gap, at least not in my lifetime. Although it's expanding pretty quick. So let's see. Where I think AI is having the most impact and what really excites me though is when we look at really dissecting video. So from a computer visual analytics perspective, we're looking now at kind of really trying to understand, like go beyond just like data, but look at kind of emotion in video. So when we look at like kind of the emotion, the tone of voice, the what is driving human connection to this particular video, I think that for us is something that like, if we can crack that, that will really help us kind of from a creator identification perspective, help us align creators to brands so much more. So that's that brand messaging, brand tone of voice, like brand alignment to creator, and that's where it will happen. That's where the magic will happen, where you can get so clever with your creator suggestion, creator recommendations, that you just know that like there's complete alignment. So that's something that I'm really excited about. I think what I'm massively excited about in terms of the entire sort of social commerce ecosystem is the moment that Meta, YouTube, and other social platforms just finally decide to just pull the trigger and just go all out war on TikTok. I think, like, look, TikTok has got a massive head start. I do think that, like, Instagram, YouTube, like probably even Snap and stuff like that will introduce this commerce channel. I think it's like kind of like, if you look at like kind of like China, for example, like how like you have like WeChat, which is like the everything app. Like I think these so big social media giants, I appreciate obviously like YouTube is part of, Google, etc. Like I think to stay relevant and to stay big, they need to start adding new things to them, which is how we change with consumer behavior, right? So it's like the reason that TikTok launched TikTok Shop in the Western world, because it started to see lots of social commerce challenges. Like, you had things like Shop My or LTK and stuff like that. Like these were all like challenges to that social commerce space. So they as a platform, they already own distribution, right? So they need to own the commerce side of it as well. And I think the other social platforms will move into this space within the next like couple of years.
Yeah, it's gonna be so interesting to see if they do and when they do, if they do it so successfully, because Instagram, Meta, and also YouTube, they have been launching these platforms to some extent and had the possibility to do shopping to some extent on their platform, but it never quite took off. And they actually backpedaled, at least Meta did with Facebook and Instagram, right? Took it off again. Now YouTube is making a push for YouTube shopping, but it really doesn't have the same feel to it as TikTok Shop yet. That might change, but I do also think they would have to invest quite heavily into infrastructure and then things like fulfillment, etc., on top of it, like TikTok Shop already did. It also seems like their brands and their companies focus a lot on AI right now, which clearly is everyone's hype. But if you do focus as much on AI, you miss out on other trends, right? That might fly a little bit under the radar. So going to be interesting if they're going to be able to actually catch up to TikTok Shop when they plan to.
It'd be really, it's going to be, they will, and look, they will, because they have, the most challenging thing with this is distribution, right? 2017, Amazon had a product called Spark, right? Failed miserably. That was basically the first version of social commerce. It was Amazon are experts in commerce. They are terrible at social media. I mean, they bought Twitch, which Twitch is very good, right? But they're not very good at building their own social products, right? But they tried to launch Spark as an interactive way of consumers to shop through a social feed. So it's the most challenging thing about this ultimately is the distribution. YouTube, Instagram, etc. They have the distribution already. TikTok have almost given them an easy route to market because TikTok is already educating the creators. Honestly, when we first started with TikTok Shop in the Western world, the creator education thing to tell people, listen, I know you used to get paid £10,000 to do a post, but we're only going to pay you £5,000 now, but you'll also earn 10% on everything you sell. That education piece was an absolute pain. Like it was so difficult to educate creators. But TikTok Shop has already educated the brands, they've educated the creators. They've basically handed it, not on a platter per se, but they've basically handed it to Instagram and YouTube to say, listen, guys, all you need to do is sort out fulfillment, distribution, and payment processing within your platform, and you're off to the races. I just think, obviously, like, Meta's very distracted with AI as a business. So is Google, to be honest with you. It's a race that they don't want to lose. Yeah, I think they will allocate resources to it over 2026. I think 2026 will probably be the year of explosion.
Where do you think the industry will be 5 years from now? If you look forward to 2030, what does social commerce look like?
So I think we already see the decline of linear TV, and we see the rise of CTV, with streaming platforms, etc. I think as AI evolves, one thing that will do for us as humans is give us more leisure time. And I think what's really important to remember is how we choose to spend our leisure time. And I think that means attention on CTV and also on social media is going to increase as well. So we're going to be spending more time on these platforms, etc. The idealistic person will say we'll spend more time with people in real life, but let's just be realistic here. We'll spend more time on TikTok. What I think happens is most, if not all, brands are now selling through social media and now selling through CTV. And we get so clever with programmatic advertising and algorithms that when I see an advertisement in between, a program that I'm watching on Amazon Prime, instead of seeing a generic piece of, advertising to say a clothing brand, I see one of my favorite influencers showing that clothing brand with the ability to purchase it straight away. I mean, we've already seen it. I was actually watching Amazon Prime last night, and I can literally buy stuff through Amazon whilst I'm watching in stream right now. And I think we get to a point where you're watching TV shows where you see, like, for example, we talked about David Beckham the other day, right? Earlier on in this podcast, I'm watching a documentary on him, and he's sat down talking to camera, and he's wearing a jumper. That jumper's then shoppable. Like, this is the world I think we move to, where we enable the transaction like that for the customer. It's like really meeting the customer where they're at, and advertising and commerce just completely merge.
Yeah, I think that's something that 5 years from now we will look back at and think that was so obvious, and how come we didn't have that until very recently? Because, as you said, I mean, you also have Netflix and other streaming platforms push out their shows and their documentaries to such a large audience, and it becomes at certain point really a cultural phenomenon, right? Everybody's watching Squid Game, everybody's watching David Beckham documentaries, and everybody is looking at, let's say, David Beckham in one shot and is like, damn, that's a really nice jacket. I want to have that. So it totally makes sense to make that as frictionless as possible to just go and buy it. Same with social media. I mean, you do have shoppable posts on Instagram and such, but it still has a lot of friction, in my opinion, that should and could be removed. So by the time you're able to just tap a button and get it delivered home, I think we're going to definitely see that space explode. It's also interesting, just to linger on the streaming platforms for a second, to see how Netflix, for example, is now bringing podcasts onto the platform, right? So you're having the creator economy really being elevated to the next level, and reach a much wider audience than they already have. Obviously, there are huge podcasters on platforms like YouTube, but to then be on Netflix, to my eyes, really takes it to that next level where we don't even know where this will lead to.
Absolutely. I think, and again, this is how this is, I mean, we've also seen like Netflix is bidding for the Premier League rights in the UK, right? So like,
Right.
these platforms are recognizing, from a CTV perspective, like they're recognizing that linear TV is really struggling. Uh, they're recognizing that like stuff is up for the taking, whether it's, sporting rights for other types of TV shows, etc. But also, like you said, the creator economy in the podcast space. It's like I mean, Spotify did it so well. Like, for example, Spotify with like Joe Rogan, for example, a huge deal they did with Joe Rogan to exclusively just be on Spotify, right? It's basically the new evolution of media broadcasting, right? So this is the new form of media, but the broadcasters aren't your ABCs and and CNNs, etc. It's your platforms. The platforms own distribution, whereas previously it was the broadcasters that own distribution.
Yeah. I mean, for sure, we know 2030 will probably look wild from our current point of view. I think a lot will have changed also with AI really taking off. I'm a little bit more concerned than you, honestly, about AI taking over content creation. And even if it doesn't quite get to that point, if AI is then editing and suggesting how to position yourself in your clips, then to some extent it still might feel like AI. But I do hope that we don't lose that human connection, we don't lose that human touch. And I think social commerce, in a way, will actually make that happen and make it possible to still have that personal relationship through, for example, live shopping, where you're able to listen to someone for hours on end if you want to, and not have to go through Sora to created clips that might be flooding the platforms. So I, for one, really hope that social media and also social commerce stays as human as it currently is, and maybe is like a counterpart to the AI created stuff on the other end.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure.
Sam, lovely talking to you. It's been a blast. Where can people find you? Where can people check out your So Squared agency, and then also the tech platform you've been
Yeah, so
building?
I'm most active on LinkedIn. So Sam Thomas Alexander Royle on LinkedIn, and then also from a So Squared perspective, we are So Squared on both TikTok and Instagram. I think that's where we're probably most active in terms of company content. But yeah, personally, LinkedIn, for the business, TikTok and Instagram.
Awesome. Appreciate you, man.
Thanks for
Thanks for
having me.
coming on.